Yeah, this is Marine 6. I'm on the westbound highway on Penn. Yeah, it seems to get out, okay. I got the collapse unit. This is Captain Fuentes.
September 11th, 2001, 9/11. Two planes struck the Twin Towers, smoke filled the sky, thousands were trapped, and first responders rushed in. Among them was FDNY Battalion Chief Al Fuentes. He was on West Street, the Marriott Hotel, trying to save lives when the North Tower collapsed. Buried in the rubble and critically injured, Fuentes was trapped for about 2 hours. Against all odds, he survived. Today, retired Battalion Chief Al Fuentes shares his story of survival and sacrifice, and through the Patriot Group, his mission to honor the legacy of first responders. Al Fuentes, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for keeping the memory alive.
We're going to talk about 9/11, what happened that day. I wanted to take you back, though, to a couple years before that, 1995, the Oklahoma City bombings.
Right.
And you were a part of an elite unit that responded to that through the FDNY.
Yes, that's right. After the Oklahoma City bombing was the largest domestic terrorism attack in our nation, in our history. And so at that time we had these USAR teams, urban search and rescue teams, 28 teams around the country. New York was one of them, and it's comprised of NYPD, EMS, and FDNY, and some special individuals, K9 and everything. And so, yes, so we were called and we responded to the Oklahoma City explosion bombing.
And you get there, Oklahoma City, and even though you've been with the FDNY for years and years, this had to be unlike anything that you've seen before.
You know, you're right, Dan. It was something I've never really witnessed of that catastrophic damage, such a massive rescue effort that involved not only, just numerous national teams, but specialists. Dan, it's funny that you started with Oklahoma City because in many ways that was almost like a foreshadow of what was going to happen with 9/11, in many ways, from my experience.
And while you were there, no survivors that you were able to pull out, but you did find a lot of victims, including a Marine?
Yes, yeah, we, due to the building and the way it collapsed. There wasn't any survivors. We covered, I believe, 33 to 35 victims, and none were alive. Nobody recovered any victims. But, as a search team manager, we had a certain area in what we used to call the pit, in the mound there, and first I would send in canines. And the canines will do a search in the area. And then if we get a couple of hits, the canines going, we think we have something there. Okay. So now we start searching. And then what we do is we send in specialists that have fiber optic cable, and they looked in. And sure enough, they're looking, and the guy comes over to me. He says, Lou, I was a lieutenant. He says, Lou, I don't know. He says, but there's this, I'm looking at this color. It's a special type of blue. He said, Lou, I think this is a United States Marine in here that we have here. So I said, okay, let's get him out. He said, and then all of a sudden, he and a couple other guys came over and said, Lou, could you do me a favor? And I said, yes. What do you want? He says, can you give us the honor of only having military personnel dig our brother out? It was really, really a special moment. And I said, absolutely. We had like a couple of retired Marines, a couple of Army veterans, and they worked tirelessly for, I was doing the night shift, and so they worked tirelessly for about 8 to 10 hours trying to execute him. And sure enough, when we got to him, he was dressed in his dress blues, and we called for the priest. He came over, we said a prayer, and then we called for our nation's colors, the flag. We covered them. And then these proud veterans escorted them out of the pit into the front of the Alfred Murdoch building while everybody just stood at attention and saluted. It was just first light. It was just starting to get daylight. And I remember tears were in my eyes, and it was, little did I know that moment was going to be repeated so many times on 9/11.
And I could tell you're emotional about it even now. At that point in 1995, you'd been with the FDNY for several years. You joined in 1977.
Right, exactly.
And you grew up in Woodside, Queens.
Yes, I did.
But of course, an immigrant from Ecuador.
Yes.
So a lot of ways, I mean, that must have been a real calling to want to join and become a public servant. Serving is what I'm all about.
I don't think there's a higher calling. I really don't. It was a passion, and then the fire department there's just nothing like that.
It took a couple years, but you end up in Rescue 1 with the FDNY. What is Rescue 1?
Well, in the city of New York, FDNY, they have these specialized units. They special operations, so to speak. It's like the PD emergency service squads. And what we are, we're highly trained. The guys get trained in scuba diving in the rivers. We did high-angle rescues from the buildings. We trained in trench collapse, building collapses, and so many other hazmat, hazardous materials and stuff like that. And so it was just constant training. And because every borough has one rescue, and because they had that one rescue, we would just get so much work. We would just go to almost every emergency that happened to come in.
What's the mindset when you're rushing into one of these high-rise buildings where there's a fire on the 30th floor and there's people above and there's people below? I mean, what's the mindset when you're going into a situation like that?
It's an interesting question, because in my experience, these responders that I work with, they really truly are special, and we're hardwired. We really are hardwired, and the mindset is, I got to get in there. We got to get in there and see if anybody's trapped and get them out. And so, but with that, you assess where you're going. You assess the building. I call it like an organized chaos. But there's reason for it. The outside vent man goes outside, roof man goes on top. The line, the engine company goes in with the line. We have the forcible entry team to get the doors open and start making our initial set. So basically, to your question of mindset, what it is it's your training. And like, okay, what's my duty? What's my job today? Because you could have those different jobs any other day.
But those are the types of things you're ready to go at any time. I want to take you to what was a beautiful day, September 11th, 2001.
Yeah.
At that time, you're doing something very different than what you were doing early on in your career.
Yeah.
You're with the harbor unit at that point.
Yeah, and I'm so glad you mentioned that, because I spent so many years, in the fire department, engine company, truck companies, and rescue. And then they asked me, and that's why you call me a battalion chief, because I was ABC. I was acting battalion chief, and I was also acting battalion chief on 9/11, but I'll go into that later. But that's what it was. I was, while they were making a search for a Marine-type individual that could run the Marine Division, they asked me to go in there, and I was in charge of that.
What kind of things does the Marine Division do in New York City?
Well, they respond to all the harbor, all the harbor fires, ship fires, emergencies.
And on that day, where were you? What was going on that day?
Being ABC, I was at the Marine Division, the headquarters in the Brooklyn Navy Yard.
Okay.
And I'd start my shift early, 7 o'clock, and I was doing the routine manpower, at whatever. I wanted some training and stuff, and all of a sudden I heard a commotion in the lobby. And my secretary, Kathleen, came running in, and she started, nervous, saying that a plane had hit the North Tower. Where I was, it's right on the East River. I had 2 large windows. I could actually see the World Trade Center towers from my windows. I walked over to my window. I couldn't believe what I saw.
You didn't know what that was at that point. I mean, we know it was. A lot of people had already reported it was a plane or an explosion, but you don't know how big the plane is. You don't know if it's a Cessna or what. I mean, you don't really know the scale of it at that point, right?
That's true, but just from what I see and the magnitude of the petroleum-based smoke that was coming out of it, I knew it was a larger plane. It wasn't like the Cessna that hit the Empire State Building. This was a certain amount. But I did not know the magnitude of how many floors were involved.
You said petroleum-based fire. What is that? You can tell the difference?
You can see it. Yeah, it was black, dark smoke. You can see it that it was just going up. I didn't see the initial explosion.
Of course, yeah.
I saw the second one, though. And I'll tell you that. So I knew that we were in for a dangerous day. So I gave my orders, and I hopped on a fireboat that was there, a small fireboat. And I took that boat to respond to the command post, being in charge of the harbor in case they needed some, lines from the river, or water from the river, or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, listen, I mean, the lower Manhattan is very close to the water at that point.
Oh, yeah.
The towers are close, so you're needed. I mean, right away, I'm going.
Yeah, well, I knew, I got to go. But I knew we were in for a dangerous day, but I never realized how dangerous. And we hopped on a boat, and I'm taking, we're taking the East River, and as we round in lower Manhattan, there's another plane. We were like fixated on this fire, but then there was this second plane. And I remember thinking, Jesus, flying kind of low. Yeah, but I'm thinking he's looking at what we're looking. Then all of a sudden, he does a 180-degree turn. And I'm looking at, I could actually hear the pilot increasing the sound of the engines. And then he started banking his wings to the right. Even at that moment in time, I did not know what was going to happen. I couldn't comprehend. And bang, he crashed into the South Tower from the southern exposure while we were at River's Edge there. The fireball that erupted was just unbelievable. It was just, that's when I grabbed my firefighter, my aide, and I said to him, we're under attack. And that was the first time, though, Dan, that something has stayed with me forever. Is when I started seeing the civilians jumping, when I was right at the water's edge from the southern exposure for the South Tower. And so anyway, we continued into to the Hudson, and we went to the Vesey Street. There's a place that we docked out fireboat there that we knew it.
Because at that moment from the water, you have a unique perspective. There's no other buildings really blocking your view, unlike people who are either there or elsewhere in the city. I mean, you kind of like you have a clear view, but you have a different view. I mean, you're having a wider point. And I imagine that sound, the sound of it coming through, was something that stays with you.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much to say. Between smells and sounds, that's been something and flashbacks that I've been getting for 24 years now, And that explosion, the fireball that erupted, it went above the top of the South Tower. Yeah, that was just amazing.
And you dock at Vesey Street, and the mindset changes a little bit, where you're not in the water. You know that potentially under attack. You don't know if more stuff is coming.
Well, I'm going to talk to you about that later.
But you get out, and what are you doing at that point?
Well, I told everybody to stand fast, and then I took my aide with me, the one that I said were under attack. He came with me, Billy, and we went to the command post, and I reported to the command post.
On the ground?
On the ground. It was right on West and Vesey, around the corner of Vesey there.
What's the scene like there?
It was, you could see, I met Ray Downey again, and he says, Al, just stand here and, wait for any orders. But you could see that Ray and I, we've seen a lot of things in our career.
Yep.
But this type of massive fires, collapse, the buildings and the amount of people trapped, we knew we were against something that nobody experienced like that before. And so that's where I was in a command post awaiting my orders.
It wasn't too long before the South Tower comes down.
Right, exactly.
Where are you at that point?
Well, what happened was I was at the command post, and what happened was we were all fixated on the poor civilians that were trapped above the area. We were trying to get in.
Coordinating the rescue.
They were getting the orders where to go, and people couldn't get in quick enough. A lot of the officers came in, they hand saluted, and they were going into the buildings, and sadly, many of them to the ultimate fate. But then all of a sudden, as I'm looking on the South Tower, I realize it's buckling, and I'm going, oh my God, it's collapsing. And I ran down into, there was like an underground parking lot, like a driveway for the parking lot. And I ran down there, and there was a dividing wall. I remember thinking, always go to a dividing wall in a collapse, just in case there might be a little more structural sound. I went there. I knew I didn't have much time. And I went there, and I just put my head down, covered my head, and I said the Hail Mary. And all of a sudden, that noise, it was like a roaring train that was coming at me. And then the noises and the steel, everything was just collapsing and blocked the entrance where we ran in. There was no hardly any air to breathe. I didn't have my mask in with me, and I remember trying to get some air from my coat, and somebody says, over here, I think I got a door, and we crawled out, and we finally found our way out on the building, the Vesey C straight side. When I came out, I just couldn't believe my eyes. We walked up to the corner where the command post was. There was no more command post. Everything was destroyed. I could not believe what I saw with the way the South Tower was just collapsing in a pancake type fashion. At that time, I remember thinking this is a war zone.
It's amazing, first of all, that you were able to, you saw him, Ray, before you got there, or as you got there, the tower collapses, and then you see him again.
Right.
It's pretty remarkable.
He was walking, yeah.
And so you make your way over to the Marriott at that point?
Well, what happens is he says to me, we just lost a lot of good guys. I said, yeah. And he goes, there's people at the Marriott. Let's go get them. And then he says, stay here and let me know when I can come out. So I was in the middle of West Street, and Ray continues into what was the left of the Marriott. And I could see 6 people standing there. A couple of firefighters were standing there. I remember the firefighter on the right. And so we did get one individual out, and I held them up because there was debris raining from the North Tower. And then when it was clear, I gave them the hand signal. Our handy talks weren't working, so we were doing hand signals then. And they weren't coming. And I remember started yelling, get out, and they weren't coming. I started walking to them, and then all of a sudden, I heard that sound again. And it was the North Tower, that freight train. And I remember turning to my left, and I just buckled down, and I got ready to the hit. And I was thinking, it's the end of me. This is it. It's over. And then, I kind of blacked out then. And, I woke up in the second hospital. That's when I woke up, when I was drug-induced into a coma. They transferred me from Jersey Medical Center to Montefiore. So,
And so the tower comes down, and you're trapped.
Yeah.
What happened to you?
Well, I don't remember it, but I know that I was given transmissions. And I was given, this is Captain Fuentes, this is Battalion, this is Marine 6, this is Marine Division, this is Rescue 2. I was actually, because a couple of friends of mine later on said, you were using all your old commands. And I said, I don't remember them, but I hear them, And I was just telling the dispatchers that I was alive.
So you're buried at that point. Well, I mean, I know you obviously don't remember, but you've been told. Where are you buried? Like, what actually happened after the tower came down?
I've been told by there was numerous individuals that were involved in my finding me. They heard my transmission. They were trying to get them.
Yeah, this is Marine 6. I'm on the west side highway. I'm pinned. It seems to get out, okay? We got the collapse unit. This is Captain Fuentes.
And they, there was a beam across me and some other metals, and they were able to cut it out. They picked me up and transported me, put me on a Stokes. My scalp was like almost off. They had to operate this. And so anyway, they transported me to the river, to the waterfront, and that's what some of those pictures.
You were trapped for how long?
2 hours just about, according to the transmissions and everything.
How were they able to get you out?
I really don't know. I remember thinking after I came home from the second hospital, I wanted to go home bad. I remember thinking, I'm dead. I thought I was flying. I have a lot of, because of the fracture, the skull fracture, this and that. They gave me a tracheotomy and everything. My 9 ribs broke, left lung collapsed, and they were both burned from everything that I inhaled. But I remember thinking, that, I can almost see myself sitting on a recliner. I was in a recliner like for almost a year.
Your friend, mentor, Ray Downey, was not too far away from you. He was trying to get people out. You're trying to get people out. The tower comes down. What happened to him?
Well, obviously, I wasn't in the right mindset, but you mentioned Ray. Ray passed away. He wasn't found by DNA like 6-8 months later by his sons. They came to my house and asked me, they said, Dad, where Dad might be. And I said, well, I had told them the last couple of minutes. I remember when the North Tower was coming down, I quickly just looked to see Ray, and this man was just incredible. He had his hand up like this as this tower was coming over, trying to get somebody down. So I did tell him that, he should be in this area here.
Right. How do you, I almost hate to ask you this question, but how do you put that in perspective, or how do you think about that this is a guy who, in your whole career, you saw him that day, maybe at random, and then you see him again, and then that's it. I mean, how do you put that in perspective now when you look back on it?
I don't know. I don't know. It took me a long time, besides my physical injuries, I had mental injuries.
Of course.
And mental injuries, they're probably worse, And the reason they're worse is because, I had survivor guilt, PTSD, and all this other stuff that I never thought of. I used to think that I'm a New York City, nothing could happen to me, whatever. Oh, man. I was like, why did I live? Ray died. And I kept thinking about Ray a lot, and then I just, I put it in my head that, when he first said to me, stay here and give me the hand signals, if he didn't say that, I probably would have went further, and then, I wouldn't have been here.
So many good people
yes.
lost that day. I mean, between the FDNY, 343,
and civilians included, yeah,
and NYPD and everyone. So many good people lost that day. By 2003, you retired as a battalion chief because of some of the injuries that you'd sustained.
Right. They kept me on medical leave after 9/11 because I had to have 8 more operations. I had my chest, a couple of my ribs, and the tracheotomy and some other stuff they had to do. So they said you got to stay on medical leave, and then so my official retirement date was March 1st, 2003.
And
2001.
not long after that, you wrote a book, American by Choice, and you also founded the Patriots Group.
Right.
And really have dedicated a lot of your life to honoring your brothers and sisters and colleagues.
Yes, Dan, in fact, that's why I'm here, to tell the story of what I witnessed, But yeah, when I was sick, I was at home and, I've never been one to feel sorry for myself. But my wife for 48 years, she gets mad. It's really like 46, but for some reason I keep saying 48. But she said, listen, you got to get out of the house. You got to get out of the house. So I asked another friend that was involved with 9/11, who's not doing well right now. And we had a little storefront that a friend rented to us, and we formulated the Patriot Group to help first responders. And then I always wanted to write a book about being an immigrant. And so I wrote American by Choice. That's why the name of the book, and it tells my story of 9/11.
And FDNY are the bravest. That's what that's the term that's associated. What is bravery? What does it mean to you?
It means them. It's not about me, I'll tell you that. What I witnessed that day is just incredible what these individuals did.
Because there's generations and maybe a generation that have that are with us now who will think about 9/11 differently because they didn't experience it. What do you want the next generation to remember and to know about 9/11?
I would just want them to know how, that on that iconic day that we were attacked, that we responded. We responded to do anything we can possible to help the civilians. It's said that it was our worst day, but it's also our finest day. These rescuers were responsible for the greatest rescue in the civilized world. Over 25,000 people were saved. So I think I want them to know that, what existed during that 102 minutes of those collapse, but also what existed afterwards. Everybody's flying the flags. They couldn't say enough. Everybody's hugging each other. Everything is, we were proud. They couldn't do enough for your neighbor. So I think that's what I wanted to remember, how, and how resilient New York City is. I've been given a gift. Every day I wake up, I'm a different person since 9/11. I'm a better person, I don't leave the house unless I tell my wife I love her. I don't leave the house unless I kiss my grandkids. And so, I look at life really like how special it is and how powerful it is and how fleeting it could be. And so I don't take anything for granted, now. Now I just look at things. Sometimes I go, wow, what a beautiful flower. I never used to think that way, but I see beauty in things now,
Chief Fuentes, very well said. Thank you so much for joining us here on HEAT NYC.
Thank you, and thank you for keeping 24 years later. Thank you for keeping their memory alive.